Wires tangled loose and frayed, screams glued in the hook once stayed. Code whisper secrets deep in the night, tech warriors battle a fading light. Carey and Doug with the wisdom they bring, sparks fly sharp like a pendulum swing. Through the noise, the truth they find, fixing the world one bite at a time. Hum low, circuits screen pain. Motherboards cracked, it's a tech domain. Challenges rise like ghosts in the air, but they've got answers, they're fully aware. Carey and Doug with the wisdom they bring, sparks fly sharp like a pendulum swing. Through the noise, the truth they find, fixing the world one bite at a time. Carey and Doug with the wisdom they bring, sparks fly sharp like a pendulum swing. Through the noise, the truth they find, fixing the world one bite at a time.
Welcome in, everybody, to today's live show. We are on Thursday, the 29th of May, 2025. And without further ado, please welcome my good friend and fellow computer repair tech, Mr. Doug Betts. There he is. Welcome in, Doug.
Hello. Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for coming back for more abuse.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, Mara and I were working on that trailer last night. Just our first sort of playing around with, my first playing around with AI. And she did some of it, I did some of it, and that was a lot of fun. It's amazing how far that's come.
Oh, yeah. Lots of fun. And that's the first trailer that I've seen on your show. Have you done trailers before?
Well, I was doing some custom Suno music when Suno was allowing you to, create the video. But the trailer would only play before the live. And then once the show went live, no one ever saw the trailer again. So that's probably why you didn't catch any of them. But now Suno wants to charge for the videos. So I did make that music with Suno, but they want you to pay to get the video now. So I thought, well, I need to put some video to it. And one thing led to another, and there it is. Yeah,
that's what I've done, is I've put their music to my own video content of some sort.
Well, I'm so accustomed to being able to see the lyrics because they're pretty clever lyrics. I don't know how much of it you were able to make out. That's why having it written, I think, is a lot better. So people can, really get what's said there. But anyway, it's a fun, catchy song, and it was a fun video to make. And, it'll be nothing in comparison to the quality of today's video by.
There you go. Sure. That's right. Yeah, that's our story. We're sticking to it.
Yeah. That's it, exactly. How you been?
Good. It's been a good day. It's been a long day.
Yeah, me too. I had customers calling me today. It looked like your phone was ringing a couple times. They're doing your show earlier this morning.
Yeah, and I had a hot issue with a client that got resolved about 15 minutes before the time that you and I planned to start together, and that involved a vertical market tech support that I was in communications with during the previous hour, and that affected their entire office. So
fun.
It was a little dicey. Yeah,
I've been upgrading some clients to Windows 11, and we're able to do about 3 computers a day, and it involves, I sent them one of the nano KVMs.
Okay,
they're in California. So it's a long drive for me to go over there. But they've also got like 16 computers. A couple of them went to Windows 11 automatically, but most of them I set up with the TPM off in the BIOS so they wouldn't get surprised. And they decided now they're ready to start to upgrading them. And I said, okay, well, I'll send you this little box. And then that way I can update the BIOSes, turn on Secure Boot. And then from there, then go back to the remote software. And so, yeah, they're about 2 hours a piece, and then we overlap 3 of basically 2 on top of the main one. So we're getting 3 done in about 2 hours. And then I'm usually starting later in the afternoon. So by the time they're ready to go home for the day at the office, I can continue well into the night if need be. And one of the things I forgot to do was that Windows 11 fix where the networking, accessing the NAS is no longer available, and using the PowerShell commands to bring that back. And there was one I just forgot. It slipped my mind. And they called me this morning and they're like, this can't access the network. And we've been through this before. So they don't know how I do it, but they said, can you do your thing with this other machine? Because we're trying to get it set up. And I'm just kicking myself, you know, I'm like, oh, there's so much repetition in it, you know, and very few machines there are the same. So one's got a gigabyte motherboard, one's got an Azerite motherboard. And so the BIOS update process is different, or which BIOS is available. But I'll tell you that Nano KVM has really been helpful to me. And I know you picked one up as well. I think you and I use them very differently, but I'm kind of curious to hear how you're using the remote KVM.
Well, I have it out at a client's office right now, and sort of also doing Windows 11 upgrades, but we're actually installing new computers. And the reason why I have the Nano KVM for them is because I'm using a kind of a maverick technique. I have one computer in their office that is already configured with all of their office software. I make a backup image of that and then restore it to the new computers. So my client connects the Nano KVM to the new computer, you know, in sequence, one at a time. And I also gave him a Macrim Reflect bootable flash drive. So what I do is connect to another computer in their office, then connect through the web browser to the Nano KVM, boot the computer on the Macrim Reflect, and then we have another flash drive also connected to that computer with the backup image from the, we'll call it master computer. So I restore the image and then bring it up into Windows, disconnect my LogMe and Rescue Technician configuration on that new computer because it has restored the connection from the original computer, from the master computer, and those need to be separated. So I just delete a service. That's easy to do. And then reestablish the link to my LogMe and Rescue Technician so that I do the rest of the configuration through that, because I find working through the Nano KVM for the rest of the configuration is just a bit of a nuisance. Working through the browser, the Windows hotkeys don't tend to work at all, or at least not as much. And I don't have that mouse lagging time. So I get switched over to my Windows-based remote control as soon as I can. Then I also change the computer SID, which is pretty quick and easy to do. And then all that's left is to create the user account on that computer for the new user. I also use a utility called Default Profile that I don't have to run that each time, but basically it makes the original user the default profile for all other subsequent users. So there's a whole lot less configuration that I need to do with a new user. And then I use Fabs Auto Backup from the user's old computer in order to bring over all their personal configurations. And then I use two utilities, a Desktop OK and Re-Icon. I just haven't quite settled on which one I prefer. And that gets all their desktop icons exactly the way that they're used to seeing it. So they can sit down with a new computer pretty closely with no burp or hiccup. It's exactly what they're expecting.
Well, that's what I really like about the Nano KVM is how many different use case scenarios I can dream up.
Right.
Where I ended up taking the Jet KVM over to Studio A. And for the first time in my life, I'm now using Wake on LAN because I log into that computer maybe once or twice a week, but it stays on 24/7. And I just thought, let's try turning it off. And then when I want to log into it, I'll hit the Wake on LAN and wake it up. And it's been working great. And I figure, you know, I've got 4 of these KVMs. One of them I recently picked up is a card that installs in the PC, and I'm having a hard time justifying using that because it's not as portable. You know, the idea is that
Right.
you can install it internally into like a desktop, and then you can also run the remote power switch and reset switch, so you can actually physically power it on. So long as the nano KVM remains powered on, it can physically basically hit the power button and the reset button for you. And so I got over there and I started thinking about using it because it did arrive and I was going to hook it up. And then I thought, you know, I think I like the portability of the USB version better. And then I have a bunch of machines over there that are lacking in updates. Like they haven't been updated to 24H2. And I thought, rather than go over there and do that, they're a couple hours each. Again, BIOS updates, all of that. No
Right.
two are the same. That I could just hook one up next time I'm over there to another KVM. And then at my convenience, do it from here. And when I'm done, shut it down. The next time I go over there, switch them out. Like it makes it so much more painless to do that. And I could have used this 20 years ago.
It's amazing how often in computers, but also I guess in life, you come across something that you hadn't conceived would be useful to you, and then just right away, so you both feet in and can't imagine how did you get along without this.
Yeah, and it's amazing when I hear people sort of turn their nose up at it, you know, in the chat room and such. And I think, well, you know, clearly home users are just not getting it, but it's not really for them. Or they're trying to use it for like remote access for support for a family member. It's like, no. So anyway, let me say hello to our folks joining us here in the chat room. We have Chevy saying hello. Somebody named 100 Bucks said hitting a man with glasses is evil work. And the AI is horrible. Well, we don't want it to look real. Come on, it's intentionally horrible.
Well, he's got laugh emojis. When I first read that one, I thought it was criticism, but it's not.
Yeah, but obviously we don't want it to look too real.
Right.
Looked like a pretty even fight there to me. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it's funny how we can both throw blows, but there's no reaction on the other side. And that didn't occur to me until I actually read that person's comment and go, all right, yeah, I get it.
The Rock Goose became a new member here. I want to say thank you to the Rock Goose for supporting us here. I'm sorry, Doug, go ahead.
No, I guess I was just, the other thing that impressed me is I didn't give any poses for that. That was all the AI with turning the face and the various different, all the hand motions. I thought that was pretty good.
I think so. I was having a good time. Mara, you got to see this. Look at this. And then I'm way too early. You know, the thing's still processing. And I'm like, wait.
Right.
Let's see. Aaron Warner says, that's an awesome trailer. Thank you, Aaron. And then, of course, there you are in the chat, Doug. And Parker Morse says, hello. Stealth Mode also became a member. Welcome in Stealth Mode as a new member. Eddie Casanova says hello. Mark Baggett and Craig Wilson joining us, along with our friend Lou Grenia and Jose Lopez. Toma 2000 says hello, as does Michael Sayers. And let's see, Steve G says hello. And Scotty saying hello from Northern Ireland. Lawrence Pierre says hello. Of course, Mara, our channel administrator, hanging out there in the chat with everyone. Bill Sony T says hello. And we have Mortant joining us. And we've got DougBot in the chat room. It's in your chat room. I guess you must be restreaming.
Yes.
Right on.
I didn't. Yeah. So I guess you're looking at chat through StreamYard.
Yeah, it combines all of the platform chats together in one.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, they all look like one chat to me.
Yeah, let me inform the people who are used to my SpeakerBot and DougBot on my channel. I turned that off shortly after the show started because I realized that was just going to be a nuisance for it to be doing its thing. So people on my channel, they saw the DougBot messages at the beginning of my chat. So they think that it's there, but no, it's not. I shut it down.
Barry Klein joins us, says hello, and Christine Garcia, Brad Ravel say hello. 3D Everything joins us, as well as Mark Gaines. Mark also contributes 20 pounds in Super Chat, says hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in chat. Thank you, Mark. Cheers, my friend. And I also see John Downey saying hello. Nicholas Barlow says hello. Samuel Nissan says hello. There's Dustin Fuller, John Downey, and Thomas Mac T. Frank Jimmy. We got a full house today, Doug.
Yeah.
Nick Poverman joins us. Mark Gaines wants to know, Carey, why are websites slow to load when on Wi-Fi, but on Ethernet it's fast? You want to take that one?
Okay, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is there's some weakness in your Wi-Fi signal. There may be a lot of Wi-Fi traffic that's going through your Wi-Fi, or there may be other Wi-Fi signals close enough to your Wi-Fi system that it's interfering. You could do a speed test from your computer while it's connected to Wi-Fi, see how your download and upload is working to get a clue of what's going on there. And it can be useful. If I could see that actual message, I don't know where you are. What's the person's name?
I should be able to put it here up on the screen. That
Yeah, that'd
came
be
from
good.
Mark Gaines.
Oh, Mark.
I just lost it, though. Where did it go? There it is. Now it's on screen.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Why are websites slow to load when on Wi-Fi, but on Ethernet it's fast? What else could I say about it? The computer that you're doing this on, are you able to connect it to Wi-Fi? Or when you say on Ethernet it's fast, are you actually comparing that to a different computer on your network? And you're saying the Ethernet's fast, and you're thinking that's the only difference because one's on Ethernet and one's on Wi-Fi? Well, no, it's a different computer. Maybe there's something else going on with the computer that's on Wi-Fi. So if that computer that's experiencing sluggishness with websites, can you put that computer on Ethernet? Can you take your computer closer to your Wi-Fi router and see if you get a difference then? Because if your signal's going through multiple walls, going through some furniture, particularly going through at angles, that can degrade the signal. Close down all the other tabs you have open, close down all the other applications you have open, see if that makes a difference for you. You could go to a incognito browser. You could use a different browser on your computer. There's a lot of different elements that could be causing the trouble. I'd probably start with the speed test and then take it from there based upon the various ideas that I've thrown out. And maybe, Carey, you've been thinking about it for a few seconds. What do you got to add?
Well, my go-to when it comes to this kind of an issue is to first look at the properties of the Wi-Fi connection. What is the speed I'm connecting at, right? So when we say Ethernet connection, what does that mean? Are you connecting at a gigabit? Are you connecting, what speed? And you'd simply go to your network adapter properties under the status and see what speed they're connecting at. So Wi-Fi has varying speeds from 802.11b, G, N, A, AC, AX. It goes on and on and on. And both devices must meet the exact same speed qualifier to the highest point. Whichever one is the slowest dictates what the speed's going to be for that device. And so it's a question of how strong is your signal? What sort of speed are you connecting at on Wi-Fi? And then how does that compare with the speed you're connecting at on wired? So for example, if somebody says this question, asks this question to me, First thing I want to know is what speed is their connection. I'm going to go to the wired computer. I'm going to right click down on the system tray to the little monitor. I'm going to go to the properties and I'm going to look at the status of it. And I'm going to see what the uplink speed, what do they call that? It has a name. I can look right now. Right click, network and internet settings, click on the adapter, in my case, Ethernet, and it says our aggregated link speed receive/transmit is 2500 and 2500. So I'm on a 2.5 gig wired connection. Now, by doing the same thing, but with the Wi-Fi adapter selected, it may say I'm only connected at 100 or 250, which is clearly a lot slower than 2500. Then the question is, okay, why is it connected so much slower? Is it because the Wi-Fi in the computer that's the best it can do because it's an old computer? Or is it the best the wireless router can do because it's an old router? Or is the signal so weak that most of my signal is just being lost in distance, in which case moving the router or moving the computer so they're closer to each other could improve that signal quality? I want to see no less than 3 bars of signal strength. That's the first thing. Second thing is I want to see what am I connecting it on Wi-Fi and what's the router capable of? Obviously, I want to connect to the fastest speed the router can do. If the router's several years old with advances in Wi-Fi, it's gotten several times faster in the last few years, and websites have become more demanding. So these are the things I would look for and would probably point me to the problem. And that's my approach, would simply be signal strength and the Wi-Fi connection type, if it's 802.11n, 802.11e, or just look at the speed, right? Just look at the speed, and that will define likely where the problem is. And at that point, what's the router capable of? What's the Wi-Fi adapter capable of?
Okay, I'll add another little piece to it as I was thinking while you were talking. I think I'm going back trying to find the question from Mark, and I can't find it in chat anywhere. But
you want the question back on screen?
Yeah, give me the question back up on screen, because there's something specific about it. Why are websites slow to load on Wi-Fi? So the amount of download speed that's actually being utilized while you're browsing from one site to another isn't anywhere near the capacity of what we see on a speed test. The speed test is showing us our overall bandwidth, and which could be shared amongst multiple computers. But if you watch your Ethernet tab or your Wi-Fi tab in Task Manager as you're browsing around and look at the receive numbers, you're gonna find probably under 10 megabits per second, regardless of what you're doing. So the amount of websites loading is not going to be, if you've got a 20 megabit per second download speed or a gigabit per second download speed, it's probably not going to make that much difference as far as how long a particular website takes to load. Now, when a website is loading, there can be a lot of elements loading for that web page from different sources. And some websites are refreshing a lot of advertising in the background. So are you comparing the same website, how long it takes to load on Ethernet versus Wi-Fi? I kind of make the assumption that you are. So you're comparing apples for apples. But with that thought in mind, I lean more towards the signal bar strength, being close to the router, making sure that this same computer performs way better on Ethernet, as opposed to comparing this computer on Wi-Fi with another computer on Ethernet. Along those lines, I'm feeling more attracted to.
Yeah, and of course, it depends on the website too. So if we're going to a website that's very busy, trying to buy Taylor Swift concert tickets, you're going to have a slow internet connection no matter what you have, because the server itself is too busy. And of course, depending on what you're doing with the website, for example, if we go to Google Drive and we want to download files off Dropbox or Microsoft OneDrive or Google Drive, you could see a pretty big difference in performance that way. But other things like Netflix and YouTube and things like that, they will adjust to your speed. So it really, there's a lot to deal with, to consider with the website itself. But primarily, by today's standards, every website under regular circumstances should load relatively quickly. And if not, then something's misconfigured or is too old. I see a lot of people that just don't want to get rid of old stuff. It still works. Why get rid of it? Well, here's one reason right here. So without knowing which Wi-Fi card is inside of that computer, you can go in the device manager and tell us. Without knowing what the make and model of the router is, again, you could look on the router and tell us. We can then identify, or you could yourself through Google, what the fastest Wi-Fi speed is they're able to achieve if everything was ideal and working well. And then from there, following up with what's your signal strength. And those three things right there ought to lead you right to your answer, in my opinion. So we appreciate the question, and hopefully that leads you down the path. Do you see questions there in the chat you want to address, Doug?
I know I've been struggling to find his comment. And I finally I looked over and boom, there it is, right in front of me.
Yeah, it's when you're not looking.
Yeah. Well, I was using Control F5 is usually my way to find something, and it just wasn't working for me. So whatever.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? So it's gonna happen during a live show if it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Our friend Barry Klein joins us with a $10 super chat. Welcome in, Barry. And Jose Lopez with a $1 super chat. Now, I've got something that I'm going to push back against, which is this common, simple, I think it's a very simple thought. I don't think there's a lot behind this thought that manufacturers don't want your components to last beyond the warranty. And the reason I say it's simple is this is somebody that I'm going to guess has never run a business before and doesn't really have any understanding of what it takes to sustain a business. And what I can tell you is businesses want you to come back, and they're not going to do that if every time you buy a product from them, the day after the warranty product breaks, you're going to go to their competitors, which is worse for them than having you just have a computer from them that lasts 3 or 4 years or longer. They would much rather, as a manufacturer, I mean, just think if you're running your own business, let's say it's a restaurant, and somebody gets violently ill after leaving your restaurant. You think they're ever coming back again? That's not good for business. And so warranties generally exist in some cases in the United States because law requires it, not because the company wants to do it. And I don't know about you, Doug, but I really don't see much breaking in electronics anymore, like bad power supplies, bad hard drives. That used to just be constant. If anything, things are getting better and better. Things are lasting longer and longer. When I bought my car a few years ago, the dealer tried selling me the extended warranty, right? He wants $2,000 for this extended warranty. And it's a used car. The car is 2 years old at the time. And I said, well, the car still has warranty on it. And he goes, yeah, but they've got all this new technology. So the rate of repair is much more. I said, well, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say the rate of repair is much less. I said, the last few new cars I've owned have never had a problem. The Mustang I had for 8 years never once needed a repair. So if I would have paid $2,000 for extended warranty, I would have just thrown my money out the window. And he said, well, I'm just telling you, I work at the dealer. I see him come in here all the time. What if I made that $1,000? Would you buy the extended warranty? I go, how much profit do you have on this? You just really offended me right now, because you're now telling me that you'll sell me the exact same nothing for $1,000 that you just a second ago were offering me for $2,000. This offends me that you think that you can take advantage of me like that. Oh, well, you can't blame me for asking retail price. This is what the manufacturers are doing. They're not necessarily wanting you to have a problem. They want to profit from the fact that you don't. By selling you extended warranties, it is a higher profit item than anything they manufacture, because so few things go wrong anymore. What are your thoughts, Doug?
Well, I'm a little bit hung up in the wording of the question. Let me kind of decrypt it a little bit, or break it apart. Manufacturers don't want, manufacturers don't want your components to last beyond the warranty. So that's implying that they want it to break down while it's still under warranty, so you can get a
I don't
warranty
think
covered
that's what he means.
replacement.
Beyond the warranty.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I don't think that's what Attila means. So the stock cooler, now saying because of that thought process, the stock cooler isn't the best for long-term life. I think Attila is pitching that as a conclusion. So the stock, as if a better cooler is going to make it last beyond the warranty, and now you're not going to be able to do a warranty claim. So it's best to make the product last beyond the warranty, so you're not stressing the warranty coverage. Yeah, I think it's probably not worded quite the way that Attila meant it. I'm suspecting the frustration that a lot of people have is with products that break down shortly after warranties expired. So the manufacturers want it to last beyond the warranty, but I think the accusation is they want it to last not too much beyond the warranty because they want you to buy a new product. That's the complaint I think that people more commonly have. But I really don't buy it. I just don't see manufacturers intentionally trying to engineer just for that amount of time. But I can argue the other side of it too, to say that they're not going to throw massive extra amounts of money to make the product be a lifelong product that you'll never need to repurchase. They do want you to repurchase. That's a fair thing. Carey and I want you to come back and watch more of our videos. So we're not going to give you everything we have in one video. Well, as if we could. So anyway, that's where my thoughts are going. Does Attila have any more of a
Well,
reframing
unfortunately, and I think this is kind of a sad state that we live in now, that people can just make up anything they want to, provide no evidence, use a single one-time experience to represent what they think is happening to everybody, and then speak on behalf of everybody when nobody asked them to speak on behalf of them. And what I also think is partly to blame is the marketing companies. See, the marketing companies, in my opinion, have manipulated Attila's belief into thinking what they make is superior when a fan is a fan. In much the same way, whether you buy a Noctua cooler or you buy a Thermal Right cooler or you use your stock cooler, they're all mostly going to be built using the same electric motor technology and voltages. So while one can argue about fan blades and things like this, I think there's a level of self-importance that somebody is doing something with their computer. I think it makes somebody feel, I don't know, like they're not a regular user. In other words, the way that the consumer-based motherboards and CPUs and coolers are manufactured are pretty much bulletproof, regardless, even if it's third party, unless it's some cheap stuff. Manufacturers of the CPUs are not going to intentionally sabotage their own products. It just doesn't make any sense. And it would cost probably more to do that, resulting in a product that costs more, which means you're less likely going to buy it. So what I see online all the time are people that are overclocking and pushing their systems and adding a lot of fans and cooling and things that they don't need because that makes them feel better, that suddenly their system's better now than a regular stock system. And again, I think this manipulation of marketing companies and enthusiasts who are selling things, whether in when it comes to enthusiasts, I don't know what their intention is, but it's all unnecessary. I would challenge almost anybody out there, if you're running a regular computer at stock voltages, you're not overclocking anything, you don't need any fans. You just need the one on the CPU, the one on the power supply, and if you have a GPU, the ones on the GPU. You do not need anything beyond that. You might want it. You might convince yourself that now your system is better, but it isn't. It's all psychological. The system will still run exactly the same so long as it runs within its engineering design, right? The temperature limitations, etc. And there is some, and it's a genius marketing ploy, by the way. Let's convince people to spend their money for something they absolutely don't need, that will make no difference, and then have them suggest to others they should do that too, because now theirs is better. And I would suggest find the evidence to prove that. If you're saying I can add a bigger radiator and I can get 6 degrees cooler, that doesn't make it better. As long as it's not overheating, it doesn't. It's like if you have a gallon of gas or 15 gallons of gas, the car still runs the same. So I have a hard time wrapping my head around this, because I'm all about being practical. And I wouldn't want to oversell my clients products they don't need, or a configuration that's more complex or has more things that could potentially go wrong with it. And I would argue the counterpoint is you're actually increasing your odds of having a failure the minute you start thinking that way, because now you're making a system more complex than what was required. You're adding more expense, and you're adding more potential for component failure with each item you add. So if you have 4 tires on your car, you could potentially have the odds of a flat tire 4 times greater than if your car only had 1 tire. Of an 18-wheeler, that's 18 wheels, you have 18 times the likelihood of having a flat tire. So the idea is that we simplify and we minimize to what we actually use. Or we're just emotional and we see a shiny, pretty thing and we want to buy it. And for me, it's always about the practical side. But I realize there are many other people out there. They want to believe in Santa Claus. They want to believe in the Easter Bunny. And I am ruining their what they want to see. But you got to back it up with data. Otherwise, it's purely emotional. And it's okay to be emotional. It's just not the business I'm in. So that's the way I see it. Alan Lindos contributes $37.77, says, hello. Sorry, I've missed a few weeks trying to catch up. Here's my late fee. Thank you, Alan. All right. Did you have some final thoughts on that, Doug?
Yeah, that's pretty much covered. The only thing that was still on my mind was in all of my work supporting clients, I've never come across a computer that was getting damaged due to overheating. I have come across a couple that were in bad shape just because they were so dirty and dusty inside and hadn't been cleaned.
Yeah.
And that there was some thermal things going on, but computers will slow themselves down. The CPUs will slow down if they are overheating. And that's, in those cases, what I found is somebody was complaining that the computer's really slow, and I go check it out and find, oh, this thing needs to be cleaned.
Or it gets loud.
Yeah, that too. Or it gets silent.
Oh, yeah, that one. Well, I've never heard anybody complain about it being too quiet. But yeah.
Well, I've had them have issues, and I asked them about the fan, or here's in the situation where they said, "Oh, the fan used to be really noisy, and now that's great. I can't even hear it."
You're right. But that's pretty. I think I've only heard that 2 or 3 times in all my years of doing this. What's really ironic is when customers do things to themselves that they're justifying spending money they don't need to spend for something they don't need, that ends up causing them a problem they were trying to avoid by spending the money and buying the thing. So I'll give you a real example. The most common heat-related repair that I do involves liquid coolers that have failed. Now, in some cases, you have to buy a cooler, like on a K processor from Intel, or some of the processors from AMD, they don't include coolers. You have to buy one, but you don't have to buy a liquid cooler. And if you do buy a liquid cooler, and especially if you buy a cheap one, they usually don't last more than 5 years. You will be replacing it. I don't know when, but if you bought a regular air cooler, the worst you'd have to do is change a fan. That's good for the life of the machine. The other thing I see people do is they add more voltage, or they're making a small little increase, which they can't even justify. It's just benchmark chasing mostly. Once in a while, there's actually a person that has a reason for doing it, but mostly they're voluntarily subjecting themselves into computer crashes and frustrations, spending money they don't need to spend, in my opinion. to only have problems they wouldn't have had if they would have just left it alone. And, you know, it's great if you want to play with it. You know, if you want to take it apart and see how far you can push it, you have more time and money than me or my clients, and I wouldn't tell you not to. But I'd also tell you, don't come crying to me about the problems you just created that were totally avoidable, because the people I'm working with, they don't have that luxury to experiment around. They need it to work, and they need it to be reliable and secure and perform. And they're not going to spend a lot of money on it, and they don't want to keep calling me back for services. And so we're living two different worlds. We have the consumers who have no concept of how business works, apparently. And then we've got those in business who were getting work done, right? We don't have that luxury to daydream and wonder what if and experiment around with things, because there's work to be done. And what's fascinating to me is how separated these worlds are, in the sense that consumers seem completely oblivious to how the world goes around, despite, if the world didn't go around, the consumers wouldn't be able to buy any of this stuff. It's like, where does it come from? Where did that computer come from? Where does the electricity in your house come from? Where did your house come from? You know, where does the food in your refrigerator and the refrigerator itself come from? Where did it, was it just born there? I don't understand. And how are those things getting paid for? Who's paying those bills, and how are they doing that? There's a good chance they go to work. And if they go to work, there's a good chance they don't sit around playing and experimenting to see what computers can do, unless you're in research and development of a company and that's your job. And even then, you're measured on how much progress you've made each day, and you could lose your job if you're just playing. So in any event, it tickles my mind how disconnected consumers are, so much so that there doesn't seem to be even the lightest grasp of where all this stuff comes from and what makes it all possible. And the other thing that just gets me is consumers don't seem to understand that they're getting the leftovers. That's all the leftover stuff. The real good stuff is in corporations and universities. That's where the good stuff is. That's where the stuff that needs the proprietary cooling and the liquid coolers. That's the exciting, super fast, cutting edge, amazing stuff. And eventually it will trickle down to the consumer. So this idea that the consumer thinks they've got something so great that needs all the special cooling is laughable. It's nothing compared to what's going on in corporate America. And if they would just get a job in corporate America in IT and see what's going on over there, they'd realize how their home computer pales in comparison to what we do, what many of us do in corporate IT. And it would just open their eyes to say, okay, now I see where what I'm comparing against. I'm not comparing against 12-year-old Billy. I'm comparing against, say, the power company that delivers the power to your house. Look at their IT department. It's mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing. It is a whole different world. Look, I got all started up now.
What else do we got?
Oh, let's see. What do you see?
Somebody that's fairly new on my channel that I've only discovered their name in this morning's show. What is he saying here? C7TJ. We always had the leftovers, some like NVMe and 18-core, whatever all existed way before, had an idea of it, either CIA, NSA, military. Okay, I'm trying to absorb that.
The government isn't exactly a leader in technology, but industry is, private industry.
Well, yeah, air traffic control is not a leader in technology, put it that way. And I know that because I'm very much in aviation. I'm a pilot, and I used to arrange seminars and conferences and had our local tower controllers in to do guest speaking, and that's really an issue in control towers, that their technology is old, but there are complications with upgrading that. So let's not spend too much time there. But let me try that again. We always had the leftovers, some like NVMe and 18-core, whatever all existed way before. I guess he's saying all that technology that we're having now existed before, and CIA, NSA, et cetera. Well, big computers, powerful computers, certainly more power was available in the three-letter agencies than what we've had for home computers. I guess that's what he's saying.
I can't tell if he's being sarcastic or not.
Yeah.
I think
Anyway, it just caught.
he's a natural German speaker. I think it's maybe translated.
I don't think so. He gave a follow-up to my show this morning. Sent, I think it was by email, or no, it was a comment. He replied to a comment. I don't. It sounds like. I think that was probably just typing quickly.
Could be.
Sometimes people typing in chat and don't realize it's not worded quite well. Let's see. Here's. Yeah, no, the response that he did on my video this morning is. Yeah, anyway, let's move on.
Okay, let me just look through the chat here. So I just, when it comes to the home computer stuff, I think what people fail to understand is how many hundreds of millions of computers are sold by Dell and HP worldwide every year. Around 300 million computers every single year. And they're all built with standard cooling. Well, not all of them, but 90+%. And those computers last, in some cases, 20 years. So I think this whole fascination with heat and cooling is completely unjustified. I think people just, they're sort of swept into a mob-like mentality of addressing a problem that doesn't exist except in their minds. And the only way I know to fix this would be to cut their head open and put a different cooler on their brain. I don't know any way to fix, there's reality and then there's imagination. And people seem hung up on their imaginations unless you're pushing the computer beyond its engineering standard, right? Too much voltage, you're overclocking it to a point where now it no longer is within its operational parameters as intended. Most people don't do that. That's an enthusiast activity, and those are the proper consequences for that action. So in any event, just for what it's worth, no matter how many times they want to insist on it, it doesn't. Let me put it this way. Let me just prove this. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire. Nope. Didn't work.
I got it. I thought that would.
If only we could just keep repeating things until they became true. I got an email here. I might have to get my glasses. An Amazon gift card comes in from. Yeah, I need my glasses now. I'll tell you what.
Well, while you're looking up that I'm going to respond to Daniel Pert at 1:45 p.m. He's got a comment. I work with residential and commercial customers both. When it comes to commercial customers, I have not really encountered a great deal of dust and dirt. I want to respond to that because for residential, I don't do a lot of residential, but the worst that I've seen is when they have a pet that gets close to the computer. But in commercial, the ones that I've found probably the worst is kind of a scary commentary is in medical offices. I've found medical office computers is small office computers, not in the treatment room so much, but where the staff works, because under their desks and such don't get cleaned so much. And a lot of what I've found is that the ones that I've been involved in, we're not having professional cleaning companies come in. And I found some of those to be the worst. And in commercial environments, seeing the keyboards and mice and desk surfaces depends upon the personal habits of the person working at the desk. But some of those have been I can't politely put any words on it right now. I'm trying trying to come up with a word that sufficiently describes the condition, and then like a mouse that just won't move around very well, and I look underneath and oh my gosh.
Yeah, not exactly.
Take a scraping tool and clean it up. Thank you, Daniel.
We do appreciate all your questions. If you have questions for Doug or I, please do ask in the chat. We're doing our best. Even when we disagree, we still appreciate your asking, because quite frankly, a lot of people don't have the guts to ask their question. And it may be that your question is something they've been wondering, but you're the one who had the guts to ask it. Thank you to Chevy, who contributes $10 super chat. And it was Lawrence Pierre with the $25 Amazon gift card. I see Charlie Purdy and Andy Kane joining us, along with Ben Laird and Timmy Tech Support saying hello here in the chat. And let's see here. Oh, so I sent Doug a little gaming computer that I had purchased from AliExpress back in Studio B days. And then for one reason or another, the review of it kept getting pushed away. And I wasn't sure it was even something I want to recommend. And certainly with the tariffs now, absolutely not. And then it recently kind of resurfaced over here as I've been reorganizing things and put a bunch of updates on it. And Doug mentioned his nephew likes to play games. And I thought, what a great way to test this, right? Have somebody who actually plays games, play some games on it. So that is now in Doug's possession. And has it been working out? Oh, there it is.
Yes. And I appreciate your careful wording around it, but I don't need to conceal that on your show.
Okay.
I'm concealing the rest of the details about it from my show, although my audience knows what's going on, but asked
you're restreaming this show on your channel right now, right?
Yes, I am. I am. And to your point, thank you, Carey.
So has he tried it yet?
It's my grandson, not my nephew.
Oh, my apologies.
I have a video clip of him.
You don't look, sorry, Doug, I want to interrupt you again, but you don't look old enough to have a grandson. So that's why.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
That's
all right. How much is that going to cost me?
How much you got? No, seriously. That was a Freudian slip.
So some fun things about this. I picked him up from school on Tuesday, and on the way home, I told him that my friend Carey Holzman, he's the one that built the computer that I used. He builds computers, and he does a lot of product reviews and demos of computers. And he has he came across a gaming computer. He's not really into gaming. So he sent that to me, and I'm going to have it in my possession for a few weeks. And I'd like to do some testing with it. I wonder if you would help me with that. Braden, my grandson's name is Braden. And yeah, he was all enthused about that. So we got to my house. Well, he said, well, is it as big as yours? This one? And I said, well, no, it's not as big as mine. And he asked, why is yours so big? Well, it's got 2 computers in it. Oh, okay. So anyway, we get home and I point, this computer's on the kitchen table. I said, well, that's it right there. And he looks at me, that's a computer? He hasn't seen many computers. Well, of course, I have them on my desk. He just didn't realize what they were. So he was pretty amazed that is actually a computer. I have a video clip of him. We did spend some time on it. I've got a clip prepared, ready to go. It's positioned at a point. This is the first time during this experience on Tuesday where we changed some settings, and we get his reaction to the first settings change. So let's see how I can bring this up. I know we got screen sharing, and it is, I think, in VLC. Is that where I have it set up? Checking. Yes. VLC. So bring that up on this screen. I want to be sure that the audio comes through. So give me a minute, people, to be sure I've got this right. So I'll bring that up full screen. So in VLC, I've got it all the way. It's Roblox is the game that he's playing. And then I go to present in StreamYard and video. There's a video file, there's a share screen, there's an image file. So I think I want to do share screen. Hopefully that can capture the audio. And does it give me any options here? Chrome tab, no. Window I could do. Yes, window, it allows me to choose VLC window. And then there's to share audio, share a tab or screen instead. So it wants me to do a screen instead of the tab in order to share audio. Entire screen, they reply to comments. So that entire screen doesn't actually show. Oh, there's what I gotta do. Okay, I get it, I'm getting it. So entire screen, also share system audio. I'm turning that switch on. Play by play here. All right, here, let's see if this does it. Now the video's paused right now, so let's make sure that it's coming over okay.
Oh, I see it.
All right, you see that? Okay, so I'm gonna hit play and the audio should be coming through. Be careful sharing screen audio. Other participants will hear themselves. You're sharing everything you hear. I think that's okay. Click, got it. All right, here we go with play. I need to find a play button. There. Mode, camera mode, maximum frame rate. No, sorry, I didn't see the word rate. Now, what does it say for frame rate?
That's like FPS.
Well, I understand what that is, but if you turn that up, see what, try pushing the computer real hard. So that's the maximum.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It explained to me what's different because I'm not
It just
sure I'm
like
understanding it.
it. Do you know what FPS is?
Yeah.
Okay, so it just makes like
Yeah, you see more
everything that
frames per second.
moves like way more smooth. Like it
Right.
looks like it's like rocking back and forth instead of going like
Okay,
choppy
how about
movement.
just pick one element to demonstrate what it is like now, and then turn it. Okay, I paused that there. That's probably far enough. I don't exactly know what is going to come right up ahead of that, but I'm probably going to be pulling some excerpts out of that video for some traders in the future. That video goes for 2.5 hours that he spent trying out this computer on Tuesday.
Well, he sounded
And-
impressed.
Yeah. Oh, there's more. There's more of that kind of impression. Now, also, we get into a conversation in this video where he actually hit 4 world records, not in this particular game, but in other games, because this one's not really a competitive game. But he did some things where it's all, fast keyboard motions and such. He got 4 world records, and he was impressed. And I asked him, well, do you think the computer had anything to do with that? And as Carey and I would have said, his answer was no, that was him doing that. Now, it sounds more impressive than it is. If you could think of, I don't know the details behind this, but I kind of think it's like when a video game in a video, what's those places? Video arcade, when the game gets reset, and now it's easy for people to get high score because, yes, it's worldwide, but how long has that game been running? I suspect that it's not quite as impressive as you might think, but he was impressed. He was thrilled with it. And I don't think he accomplishes that very often on his computer. His current computer is my old streaming computer. and it minus a graphics card. It doesn't even have a graphics card. So he was really very thrilled with the experience on this. And we did some other settings changes and pushing of it. And I think he's going to, we'll have another session or two where he might try some other games and let me capture some video of that before this computer is no longer in my possession.
I love seeing that computer being used the way it was intended. Instead of sitting here on a shelf collecting dust,
Right.
it warms the cockles of the heart that it's doing what it was finally doing what it was designed to do. And, you know, for me, simply not having the time to go through all that, I appreciate getting the feedback on, you know, its capabilities in actual use case scenarios outside of synthetic benchmarks. You know, we have a restaurant here we recently discovered. It's called Forks and Boards. And I'm thinking about maybe asking them if I can bring my cameras in and interview them, because it's an old school, and these do exist. I see a lot of them in California. I don't see them much in Arizona, but it's a sort of a, how can I describe this? It's a big building in a strip mall. And when you walk in, it's aisles and aisles of games, from everything from Uno to Monopoly to Battleship to Simon. Remember the game Simon, where it lights up the colors and you have to push the buttons in the right order? They have games going back 50 years, maybe longer. Then you've also got Warhammer and Dungeons and Dragons. And then at the end of the aisles, 2/3 of this building going all the way to the back wall is all basically like picnic tables, or, you know, long rectangular tables that people sit around and they throw their dice. And it's a communal gaming effort. You've got your clans and you've got your dungeon master, and then connected to that is a restaurant. And instead of showing sports on TVs over the bar, it's video game captures of people that are also playing video games, which I'd much rather watch while sitting down dining than a baseball or a basketball or football game, soccer, etc. And I'm just so enamored with the place, and the food is really good. And then on top of that, and behind the restaurant, in the back area, they have seating for what they do a movie night, where they'll show like Lord of the Rings or something. And once the movie starts, nobody else can come in. There's no interruption. You have food delivered to your table. It's, you know, maybe seats 40 people. It's pretty small. And I'm like, where's this place been all my life? The point I'm making about this is, when we say gaming, that is also gaming. If you're rolling dice and playing Dungeons and Dragons or Warhammer or Monopoly or Battleship, that's all gaming. But there's also video gaming. And then within video gaming, you have all the genres of esports and retro, like Nintendo type games, and of course, modern FPS and massive multiplayer online role-playing games. So when we call something a gaming computer, I have no idea how we measure that, other than the reality of the person who owns it and how they use it. That's your test.
I've had experiences with people saying, "Oh, I don't use my computer for much, just playing some games." And the person who's speaking to me, I kind of know what that means. That means like solitaire, you know, very low demanding games, not what we in the industry think of when somebody is saying, "I'm a gamer," or "I need a gaming computer." That, in my mind, does take me down a certain road with a high processor, a dedicated graphics adapter, and so on, and high memory. And so when an adult or a senior person says, "I want to get my grandson a computer, but it's just for gaming," like that's going to make it inexpensive. I go, "Oh no, that's a different scenario."
I do try to let people know there's basically 4 tiers: budget or entry level, mid-range, high end, and above high end, gaming. So gaming's even above that would be a server. maybe a workstation server. But for most consumers, those are your top four, and gaming being the single most expensive at the very top that people could invest in. So this idea that, yeah, it's just for gaming. Yeah. But again, it could be something simple. Some of these budget mini PCs will do retro
Right.
gaming just fine. They'll even do a lot of esports, League of Legends and things like that. Pretty easy to play. Older games, I mean, geez, they got Doom running on a PDF file. So it's amazing how the technology is just getting so compressed down now. I grew up with the invention of the arcade game, right? That was, I feel very fortunate to have been around while that was being introduced to the world. And it was absolutely just the best time. I mean, the worst of it was running out of quarters, but going to the arcade, it was a social thing. You couldn't play all night because the arcade would close typically around 9 p.m. You'd have to go home. You don't have to stay. Sorry, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, kind of a thing. And that was sort of the discipline that I was raised with in gaming, was conserving and rationing the quarters. My motivation to go further in the game was more about getting my money's worth than it was about trying to beat a high score. And then being sent home because you have to go, you don't have a choice. That was sort of instilled in the discipline. Whereas now people can play games. There's been people that have had heart attacks that haven't slept in 3 days and are drinking Mountain Dew and have given themselves heart attacks and died on these extended gaming sessions. It's not common. That never happened. I'm just saying, in the 80s, that wasn't a thing. But with all these different definitions of gaming, that's why it's important when we talk to a customer, even a business customer, we need to understand, what is it you need the computer to do? Specifically what game? Specifically what software in the case of a business? Or do you anticipate you're going to need in the near future, not too far ahead, but let's say the rest of this year? Are you planning any changes or upgrades to the office? Are there any new games coming out that you're expecting that you want to play? Let's get that now. Let's get everything prepped for that. And how much money do you have to spend? Now, what's interesting from my perspective is when it comes to gamers, oftentimes I can skip over every one of these questions and go right to the last one. Because when they say, what gaming computer should I buy? Instead of, I've learned, wasting my time with all these questions, let's just get to the nitty gritty. What's your budget? Because ultimately, that's going to determine what your gaming computer is going to be. And if it's just not going to be capable of playing that game to the level you want, nothing I can do about it. Not at that price point. Have you run into something similar where sometimes the consultation is just, what's your budget? That's the answer to the question.
I run something similar, not so much in terms of what is your budget, but spending time going down a road asking questions, and then somewhere I find that their priority, what's really important to them, has never been mentioned. And when I get to the real truth of the matter, I realize, oh my gosh, we just wasted a whole bunch of conversation. That's what you struck for me there. But the budget, that hasn't been my experience so much. I want to hit something here because somebody in chat is psychic. I had, as you were talking about gaming and such, I had this certain image and thought in my mind about my dad purchased the first home gaming system in my neighborhood. And then Martin Hogg, just a couple minutes after I'm reminiscing of that in my head, kind of subconsciously, he makes the comment, electronic tennis, beep, boop, beep, boop. And it was Pong that we connected to the television set, was the first gaming device in my neighborhood when I was a teenager. And we really enjoyed that thing. We played it quite a bit, and it just pong, 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 or ping, and it was fairly slow motion. You're moving your paddle back and forth, and you can get it up a little bit by hitting a little bit on the corner of the paddle to make it go faster. But yeah,
Isn't it
so
amazing? And isn't it for me like there's a lot of gratitude to have been blown away by that,
yeah,
and then blown away by the first video games that talked, and then blown away by video games in color, and then blown away each time they got more advanced. It was the most exciting thing ever. And now kids, they get right to this top level. They never go up the stairs and have, like, they don't realize how much they've missed and just how amazing it was. Because let's face it, what's the last amazing game that came out as far as like graphics and visuals and gameplay? They're all kind of the same now. All these first person shooters are all okay. It's different monsters and it's different levels of resolution, but what happened to the mind-blowing, like the music in Halo, just the whole Halo gameplay, Sonic the Hedgehog, that was just amazing at the time. And then the next amazing thing came out in the next one. Now it seems to have leveled off, and I feel bad for kids today that they don't get that sense of wonder and amazement that we had. Even the first stereo game, I remember Marble Madness in the arcade, and how amazing, because remember the audio was also just bleeps and bloops, and we got to see that expand into, you know, MIDI audio and stereo, and the excitement of the Sound Blaster A64 being shown off at Comdex, and you could pre-order it for $100. The Voodoo graphics cards, oh my gosh, those were such great times. You look deep in thought, Doug.
I'm just glancing over chat messages.
Yeah,
oh, okay. There's C7T is bringing up my memory issue, not my memory, the computer.
You're having a memory issue?
well, yeah, but that's not what he's bringing up at 2:12 p.m. But what I noticed. Did Doug downgrade to 128 gigs? Yes. Looks like 2 DIMMs in each side rather than 4 sticks. So for a total of 8. So is he actually seeing that?
Yeah, I was going to say, he must have good eyes.
Well, they have the RGB on the memory. Yeah, when you bring me up full screen, you can see the 4 red sticks of RAM. So yes, I removed the other 4. Yeah, here they are. I was having some kind of a problem with Big Beast Build with it was crashing or locking up or something or other. Eventually tracked it down to memory that actually tested bad. So I took out the 4, and at some time back in history, Carey just said, "Oh, like he doesn't remember this," but I inquired from him about doing a warranty return on this or exchange, whatever, and he provided me the information maybe a year or 2 ago, and I just
what? And I don't remember it.
Yeah, why? How do you not remember something that recent? And I haven't got around to doing the warranty replacement on these. Why? Well, I don't need the extra memory. It does make the computer take longer to start up, I think. Can't say that I've really tested that. I don't have any pain point that causes me to need these. So the other things that I have on my plate to do have just taken priority over this. As I understand, these are lifetime warranty. So I'm not under time pressure to swap them. If I take the time now to do it and then put them back in, so what? What does that gain me? Now, when I bought this computer, Carey asked me if I wanted all that memory. And I think he was hinting that maybe you shouldn't. And I just said, no, I'm just going to take it with however you built it up. At that point in time, I had a little bit of money burning a hole in my pocket, and I was just on a whim kind of buying this computer, and I haven't had one moment of regret. But it doesn't. 256 gigabytes of RAM, no, I'm not needing it. Now I have seen with 128, I've seen it get up into the high 90 gigabytes of usage, but that is when Adobe Acrobat Pro is no, that's not right. The video, not Acrobat Pro, but the Premiere. Adobe Premiere Pro was misbehaving, and it was chewing up memory, and I'd see it up to 90 gigabytes or more just before it crashed. So it wasn't that it was needing that memory. And then the other thing that I've observed about memory, and I kind of like to prove this or demonstrate it, is that let's suppose you have 16 gigabytes of memory on your computer, and you load up a bunch of programs and check in Task Manager to see how much memory you're using, and then double your memory, go up to 32 gigabytes and open all those same applications and see how much memory you're using. It's my opinion, and I haven't proven it, that with the way that the swap file works these days and how fast our drives are, that Windows is going to manage your memory to where you have a significant amount of free memory available all the time, no matter how low your actual physical memory is. And that unless you disable your swap file, you're never really going to fill up much of your memory because Windows is going to manage it. Now, that's my impression, that's my deduction, that's what I've come to think is reality, but I haven't tested that or proven it or tried to document it. Carey, I'm thinking you might have some input on that.
Well, I'm surprised to hear you're even using 90 gigs of, I mean, that's...
That's when Adobe Premiere was misbehaving.
Oh,
It was on its way to crashing.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Not under normal.
I heard what I wanted to hear there.
That's right. That's right.
I think most people, honestly, with 32 gigs of RAM is fine. The reason where that kind of memory would benefit you, one example that I can think of is if you're running a lot of virtual machines.
Yes.
And then,
yes, definitely.
And then, of course, you can assign 32 gigs or more to each virtual machine, and then it's, much, much faster, much more responsive.
And that was actually a justification that I had for wanting this all this memory, and I had forgotten that until you just now mentioned that.
Yeah.
And
otherwise,
I have done some efforts along virtual machines, and my community has worked with me on that. They actually walked me through doing it. And then that was a time period when Big Beast Build ran into some problems. And I think that's when I eventually wound up discovering that it was the memory issue. By that time, I had unwound the virtual computers, and I just haven't had a reason to go back to it. Again, it has to do with anything that I spend my time on these days, it's because it has a profit or a channel benefit, or it's to solve some kind of a pain point. And for me, implementing virtual computers, that's not solving anything for me. So I haven't gone back to revisit that. But yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, software testing, sandboxing, trying other operating systems out, Linux variations, etc. There's certainly enough home lab use case examples for that. But I don't know. I live in a world where, yes, that sounds appealing to have a home lab and to sit around all day and play video games and play with operating systems and then act like I'm all superior and say this one's better than that one and you're all a bunch of sheep for running Windows, but you're not answering to anybody and you're not being held accountable to anybody and your bills are getting paid. That's a luxury that maybe someday, 20 years from now or in my retirement, I will have that amount of money and confidence that I don't have to work and I don't have to contribute to society, and I can just focus on what I think I want that represents everybody in the world, instead of letting business dictate what I need to do to earn a living. So I have this massive disconnect from the people who do that. And I think part of it is I want to do that. I can't do that and pay the bills at the same time. I mean, imagine just being able to sit at home all day and do whatever the heck you want and have nobody to answer to, and all your bills get paid. Do you do that?
I don't, but I do know people. I know a guy.
How do I get to be one of those people? What do I got to do?
Inheritance, family wealth, found a business that you sell for multiple millions of dollars, and then not have the motivation to do it again.
So when my mother died, there wasn't so much a will as there was a bill. So I think my parents didn't do that right. But boy, oh boy, I sure do think about how life could have been different if I didn't have to actually be responsible and I could just do what I wanted and let someone else pay the bills. But regardless of that, the representation, that I think you and I both bring to our YouTube channels that's different from most in the tech arena is bringing actual use case scenarios, right? These customers that we have are their accountants and their dentists and their real estate agents and their lawyers, and they have real needs to serve real clients that put us in a position where there's a great sense, at least for me, and I imagine for you, of fulfillment that we're able to, contribute, and that in most cases, not only are they paying you, but they're also exhibiting gratitude. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for pulling this out of this technical hole we were in. And how many times have we been told you're the, second, third, fourth person, and you were the one who was able to fix it. All these other people we tried before you. And that gratitude grows with each person that isn't able to fix it. And the check, right? They're not like, oh, I have to pay you. They want to. They're saying, here's your money and thank you. What other job can you get that at,
Yeah, this is very satisfying. The people that I know that do not need to work and who choose not to, not all of them, but a significant portion of them aren't really enjoying that. And if I were suddenly thrown into that environment where I did not need to generate an income, if I were not doing what I'm doing today, both in my business and the YouTube channel, what would I be interested in? What would I want to do? Many people my age are retired, and I have a couple brothers who are retired before me. My dad was retired before my current age. I don't, that isn't attractive to me. And I didn't think that I would be feeling that way at this age. Of course, I didn't think I'd ever be this age. Not because I thought I would die. I just didn't think the world was going to, I was always going to be 20 something.
Mine's a little different. I would have told you I'd be dead before 40, so I wasn't too worried about the future.
Yeah, no, it wasn't any kind of death thing. It wasn't the end of the world kind of thing. It's just that year, 2020. Oh my gosh, 2012. That'll never happen. It just, numbers just can't go that high. It was just not in my makeup somehow to think that was actually going to happen. I think recently I did a little bit of math very briefly, and I didn't stick with it, of what the year would be when I was in my 90s. I thought, no, that can't happen. But yet I have told my audience that I expect to live to 125, so we'll see how that goes.
And then you're going to come back and haunt us. or at least the ones who wronged you.
There you go. Well, yeah, my videos will be still around to hunt. I've
You're going to be rattling chains and squeaking doors. That'll be Doug.
Yeah, I've thrown out this thing that I'm my objective is to have 1 million subscribers on my channel, and I haven't actually said it this way, but I could say it this way: is 1 million subscribers on my channel or die trying. And that, while it may sound a little bit morbid, what I'm actually saying is that I don't know that I really have anything else that I want to do. So why not keep going? And it's not about getting there. It's not about getting to that number. If I were to set a number that's people would say is a more realistic goal to actually get there, I don't actually want to get to the goal. The thing I enjoy is the journey. The challenge,
you need to be careful
the struggle.
what you ask for.
In which way? That I don't get to what I'm to the goal? What do you say?
I think one of the worst things that could possibly happen to a content creator is you become really popular. So if you look at the scrutiny on people like Mr. Beast or PewDiePie, or the Marquez Brownlee, they are under a magnifying glass, the likes of which, you give up your anonymity, you give up your privacy, you give up anything private about you. You are trading in exchange for becoming popular. And the more popular you are, the more successful you are. We live in a culture, in a world today, where people want to knock you off your perch. People you've never bothered, you don't know who they are, you've never provoked them, have made it their life's mission to attack you in any way they can. Whereas before, when you weren't popular and you're off the radar, you were left alone. And the more subscribers you have, the more that scrutiny and instigation grows. And it even creates movements of people that now gang up against you because you misphrased something or you've made a minor mistake. And now you're not perfect. And therefore, they want to make sure that you know that they know. And it gets even to the point of death threats, stalkers, legal harassment. There's a great documentary that came out recently on Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman. He never bothered anybody. And yet he was accused of having child pornography, which he didn't. He was accused of just random attacks. Just people don't like you. You're too popular and we need to take you down a notch. And then the question is, do you want to fight in court and spend all this money and all this time battling against people you don't even know who claim you've damaged them somehow? Or do you just make it go away, pay some money and, get the press to move on and focus on somebody else so you can rebuild your career after this damaging and false accusations have all over print and the public believes it, they want to believe it. What a nightmare. And if he would have chosen any other line of work, or if he never would have been that successful, these false accusations would have never been levied against him and against people he never did anything to. And one might argue the people he actually, who feel like they were worked over by him are people that feel like he didn't treat them well in working with them or give them fair credit. And none of those people ever attacked him. It was, well, I suppose not there were a couple, but not to the level that made the press and really damaged his career. So if you were to hit 1 million subscribers, my personal feeling is that'll be the worst thing that ever happened to you.
Well, let's not spend too much time on that, because that's not really the only reason why I say that is because it is what fuels me to keep trying things, and that is fun and enjoyable to me. That's where the focus is.
I'm 100%
where I get to. If I wind up having issues down the road because of being known like that, so be it. I'll have to deal with that. And when I started this whole venture, there was a very real understanding in my mind that if something really goes wrong, if I attract some real wackadoo, I may wind up having to on short notice selling my house, moving away. changing name if I really need to if it gets to that level. Am I willing to risk that level of adventure in life? And I wound up saying, yeah, okay, yeah, I will go down this road knowing that I might have to pull a plug to that level of, but that the percentage of people who get famous that get the type of experience that Pee Wee Herman experienced is, it's not most of them. So I'm not too worried about that. Really, what I'm going for is the daily challenge that I'm enjoying.
There was a football player recently. They just had to sell his house because the address where he lived got leaked out. And between paparazzi and stalkers and super fans, they're threatening his family. You know, it's not just about you being able to protect yourself. Now they're going after anybody related to you, any way to get to you. And for what? Because he plays football, you know, for a team they don't like. It's insane, the world we live in. And, you know, I think that there's a level of popularity that's fine, like a local celebrity, let's say, versus somebody with worldwide popularity. You think of Paul McCartney, he gave up his anonymity years and years, decades ago. He can't go to a remote island anywhere on this planet without being recognized. And then with people tweeting, hey, Paul McCartney's here, he'll be mobbed within minutes, no matter where he goes anywhere in the world. Is that a fair trade for his popularity and fame and wealth? I don't think I would make that deal. And that's a far cry from anything, you know, we would ever get on YouTube, but still.
Yeah.
Or Elvis, you know, you look at the stalking and the threats and such, and all this kind of started with Elvis. There wasn't, celebrities before then could walk up and down the street. Humphrey Bogart, people would respect them and step aside. They might say hello. That's the extent of it. All of that decorum is gone. Now it's, you know, they shove a camera in your face and say selfie. They don't even ask. I don't know. I think there's a careful balance, right? Finding of the right audience, not just a audience. It's just like with business. You've got customers, you've got good customers. And while I won't turn away a customer, I also won't be sad if a customer leaves. But a good customer, I'm going to do what I can to keep them as long as possible. I'm going to put more effort into that. And if all I have left at the end of the day are my good customers, I consider myself successful with all this, without the stress that comes from just any customer. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Let's turn a different direction here. I'm looking at David Graham, 2:25 p.m., saying, I don't miss working and having to answering to others. And this brings up a subject that self-employment. I would be speaking very differently along these lines if I was working for an employer. My previous employment in the computer industry and other industries prior to that, they were not 5% as enjoyable as what I find working in this industry, self-employed, is. I recall when I left jobs for whatever reason, that being happy to not be there anymore. I recall having to do things the way my boss wanted me to do it as being so constraining and frustrating. Let's see, I'm trying to think of an example. How was it? The last company that I had worked for, my boss wanted me to handle something different about how I was working for the outside clients, and it was just going to make me so inefficient. It was just going to slow things down so much. And I bristled against it, and I think eventually that's what led to the mutual separation. I still to this day don't know if I quit or if I was fired, and don't don't care. But it was obvious the employment could not go because he put a total ultimatum that I just couldn't see working that way. And it didn't make sense to me. And it was what I felt to be a micro controlling, not giving me any, wanting to take away the agency that I had actually grown to, of being able to interact with the clients. And it was clear that it just wasn't going to continue. So when I left that, I did not have another job to go to. And that's when I wound up opening business for myself. And it was going to be sink or swim. I could not utilize my connections with any of the clients that I knew through his office. There was no written non-compete contract, but he very promptly had his lawyer send me something threatening to sue me if I had business relations with any of the people I made contact with during that. And I said, you know what, that's fine. I need to be able to make this work without relying on those. If I can't make it work without relying on those contacts, then I shouldn't be in business on my own anyway. So I just didn't struggle or fight that at all. I probably could have, but it wasn't worth putting the effort into it. Well, within 3 months, I had small revenue coming in, and within about 6 months, I was supporting my family. My wife was not working. Actually, well, let's not go too far down that road. At the time that my income 6 months down the road was supporting my family. Let's put it that way. And it's been a good run since then, and very, very enjoyable. And I just cannot imagine that I could tolerate going to work for someone else. So that's in response to David Graham's comment that apparently he is retired, I will assume, or for whatever reason not working. He says he does not miss it. And if that was my environment in my career, I would be right there on board with you. But I find this endeavor so satisfying. Now, for somebody currently employed, listening to me say this, how great it is that please do not take that as my, proselytizing you, saying that you should leave your job and go start an IT support business on your own. It is not easy to get established. I paid my dues. I put hard work in to make that happen. And it was a struggle, and I lived off credit cards for a significant amount of time. So it's tough to get it going, but if you get into that place, and if you're successful, which is a small percentage of people who start business on their own that wind up succeeding. So, after painting that rosy picture, I got to put in the balance. It does not mean it's easy to do. Please don't jump out there and do it and say, Doug said that I could do it. No.
You do need a certain personality to be self-employed, or to be self-employed for any length of time. For me, it was a very similar story. I went from one company to another and just felt it wasn't with the right company. After about the 5th or 6th one, they were all kind of the same. And when I was sharing the stories with my father, I know my father's thinking, what's wrong with my son? Why can't he keep a job? But he was self-employed for a long time, and he just wasn't getting the way things had changed. And eventually he did end up getting a job where his work, as he was doing System 36, big IBM mainframes, RPG-2 programming, was being replaced by home computers. He thought those were toys, and he couldn't be bothered to waste his time on them. So he ended up getting a job at Penny Saver there in California, and started dealing with the office politics where you were punished when you succeeded. In other words, as a real example, he was working on a Y2K. Something had to be done in preparation for Y2K. And he had some company coming in. It was probably around this time of year, around Memorial Day. And he had some company coming in from New York. And last minute on a Friday, the boss says, I need you to come in on the weekend and help the other team get caught up with their Y2K. And my father said, you're punishing me for being on time, for having our project done on time, by telling me to come in and help the other team who doesn't have their project done on time. And of course, they manipulate. They say, well, we're all a team here. It's not you or I or them. It's us, and we help each other out. And my father said, I don't have any problem with helping other people out. It's just that you've told me last minute, I've got company coming in from out of town. This was planned weeks ago. If you had given me the courtesy of, planning this, scheduling it, then I could have made some arrangements, but there's no way I'm going to abandon company that's flying out 3,000 miles to come visit, to come here to help another team when I did everything I'm supposed to do. I'm just like, my dad's telling me the story over the phone, and I'm like, yes, he gets it now. That is ultimately why I became self-employed, because
Right.
I was told I would get a review and a raise, and it didn't happen. And then I'm patient, I'm waiting, and probably more patient than most. After 6 months, I'm like, where's that raise? To have an actual manager tell me, I can't authorize raises. That happens at the headquarters. Well, then what business do you have promising me one? Things got really nasty, and there's they act like, the bosses I had acted like they were doing me a favor, that I had to have the job. And I've never worked for the money. I work for the appreciation, for somebody to say thank you. When I was working at Intel, and I gave them my notice, they said, what do you want in order for you to, what do we have to give you for you to stay? And I said, well, I know you guys won't match salary offers from other companies, so I don't even know why we're discussing this. He goes, well, we might make an exception. I mean, what would it take for you to stay? And so I said, just some appreciation, a nickel an hour more pay, a piece of paper that says, we appreciate the contribution that Carey has made. And he stuck out his hand and he said, nice working with you. As if the whole point was to demoralize me. Like I was holding back tears when he did that. I was so, it was almost like a control power, put me in my place kind of a thing to demean me. And I knew going into it, it was a trap. I knew by him asking, there was no way they were ever going to give me anything. And I couldn't have asked for anything simpler. And I said, I would rather put 80 hours in for myself per week than 40 hours in to help somebody else get richer. And not only that, if I want a raise, I don't want that to be on anybody but me. I'll work harder for it. And if I don't get it, that'll be my fault. And if I'm laid off and I lose my job because some executive was pilfering from the company or did some bad math, and now I lose my job, at least if I'm self-employed and I lose my job, it's because I screwed up. These, for my personality, I can accept I screwed up. I can accept if you want a raise, go get it. You know what? My mother used to say something like, you could wish in one hand and crap in the other. Let me know which one fills up first. That's how I was raised. And so it was just a matter of time before I got to this conclusion that I can be responsible for my own success or failure instead of waiting on the approval of somebody else and deal with exactly what you're talking about. I'm being dictated when to show up, what to wear. And so much of what was held away from me, kept secret. But if I had anything, we're a team and we're all together. But then what happened to my coworker? Oh, it's none of your business. Well, what do you mean it's none of my business? He was here yesterday. What happened? We let him go. Why? Don't worry about it. I thought we were a team. You didn't include any of this on this decision that, whatever the reason was, we couldn't have worked. You just made my life miserable now because I don't have a person to do this job, and you're still paying us all the same. So now we're working harder, and you let go of somebody that, as far as we can tell, there was no reason for it. Anyway, I said, enough of that. I want control of this. I want to understand why things are happening. And I want to work more efficiently, like you're talking about, wanting to do things following some policy or protocol that just is bureaucracy and it's not getting anything done. So I think we have that, and maybe all people that are self-employed have that in common. Just cut to the chase. Richard Branson started Virgin Airlines when a flight got canceled, and he was trying to get somewhere, and was at a layover airport, right? He was there for a layover. And this is the way he tells the story. He said, is there any way I can get to my destination? They said, you could charter a plane. So he goes in the airport to find what would this cost to charter a plane, finds out what the cost is, and then goes back to everybody waiting at the gate and says, does anybody want to pay, if we have 20 people that all pay this much, we can get and then they said, well, if you're going to do that, you can, kind of start your own airline. And he said, well, call it Virgin, and the rest is history.
Wow. I did not know that.
Isn't that incredible? It's inspiring. And
yeah.
What did they say? The necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
Hello to Marco Maelstrom. Marco joins us all the way from Italy. So are you getting a lot of Windows 10 anxiety from customers at this point? A lot of upgrades or support calls with, the looming deadline?
I wouldn't say that I'm getting a lot of them, but I've been surprised when, let's say, over the last few weeks, I think maybe 2 or 3 people have asked me about it. I didn't think they would. I have initiated the conversation with a lot of my clients. My invoices that go out by email for a couple of years now have been announcing this deadline. And most of my clients I'm working with them for that. Well, I had a phone call from a woman who used to work for a client of mine. She now works for the government. And during COVID, they were doing work from home. Then they're one of the offices, one of the agencies that got ordered to go back into the office. She called me recently about her own personal computer, and a conversation that I had with her maybe a year or more ago. She said that you told me back then that I was going to need to get a Windows 11 computer. I'm ready to do it now. So she had the presence of mind to call me up and follow up on that. Her computer, I think the box arrived earlier today. I've got a box out there in the other room that I think is her computer. So I was surprised. She's not a regular client. She hasn't had an invoice for me ever since that conversation. Could have been 2 years ago. And there's a receptionist in an office. Well, she's really office manager. She initiated the conversation with me recently, a couple of times actually. And it's a 2-person office. Currently, used to be a 4-person office, but the business owner is already Windows 11. So anyway, she kicked the ball to get that rolling. So I've been surprised at people who have brought up the subject themselves. I didn't think that would happen.
Do you think it's going to happen? Like, do you think that things are going to get real busy in October? No?
I feel like I'm on track. I think I have a lot of computers that need to get put into place. And as the people on my channel, I think you are aware of this Maverick approach that I'm taking in some of the offices that make it quicker and easier to roll out new computers. Well, I've got that pretty well under wraps now for that procedure. Haven't really got to the point of cranking them out yet, although I have another, I think 4 of these B-Link computers in the other room for a particular client that have been there for weeks. And I feel I'm at a point where I can roll them out pretty quickly. So my offices that have the higher volume of computers, they are on track, systems in place.
Good.
So I'm not feeling stressed out about it. In fact, I'm feeling so not stressed out about it that I have revised my previous opinion that I would not spend much time at the cabin this summer. I think I am going to. Now, people on my channel, when I say the cabin, know what I mean by that. Carey's audience who aren't so familiar with me might think, oh, this guy's doing really good. He actually owns a cabin. No. This is a testament to how close in this kind of business environment you can get with clients. I have a client who has a cabin up at Huntington Lake, and they let me use it for free.
Nice.
They don't get any discount on their bills from me.
Yep.
And that was the way they wanted. They own this cabin. They wanted it to get utilized. So to be able to let other people use it was something that brings them joy. And it's not a trade arrangement at all. They get joy out of me using it. And I had told them, I think some months ago, that I might not get to use it much this summer, and they appeared to be disappointed at that news. But that, and I have another client who I think of them as friends, really, but another one that has a home in North Fork, and he lets me use it when he spends 6 months out of the year in the Netherlands. I don't get to that one so much, but I have clients who I have keys to their offices, their alarm codes, their credit cards. They trust me very much with a lot of the details of their life, and that's a very satisfying place to be, a very responsible place to be.
We have a similarity there. I had a client, very wealthy, self-made millionaire, multimillionaire, had $1 million house, cabin, if you will, in Sedona, Arizona. And he said, you're welcome to stay there. I mean, I'm busy working. Somebody should enjoy it. And I'd sell it, but what am I going to do with the money? It used to anger me when he'd say that. Let me get my violin out.
Right.
And I would go there. Sometimes there'd be problems. Like one time there was a leaking roof, and it was dripping all over the carpet, and who knows how long that had been going on. And I said, hey, I just want you to know I just got up here and there's a leak with her. And then he starts, getting all angry. I said, look, I'm just telling you. And then they had this jacuzzi, and I said, man, I'll tell you, your little water heater up there, it's a 2-person jacuzzi, and you have to shut the water heater. You have to shut the water off halfway through filling it because the water gets cold. You have to wait for the little water heater to heat up again. I go, when you're doing this work, you ought to consider getting an on-demand water heater. Well, what's that? Long story short, got an on-demand water heater. And it ended up, he was pleased that somebody was using it and showing activity around it. And just to give you an idea how nice this place was, 2 doors down in the 70s, my understanding, is a place that Orson Welles used to rent, or he owned it, I'm not sure, and spent his summers there. So really exclusive, really nice, and very modern. Like calling it a cabin, it was more like a summer house. It was just windows on a river and the red rocks of Sedona. And while we're talking about this, it occurred to me, I was watching another tech channel who's closing their repair shop down. I'd be kind of curious on your thoughts on this, Doug, because I've always been about wanting to help people. It's never really been about the money. But I also don't want to get walked on and taken advantage of. So there is, money absolutely plays a role in this. But it's always important to me to charge what I think is a fair price and not to see how much I can get. That's just how I was raised. So I see myself in this other tech who's now, after 10 years, resentful, angry, burned out, and wants to shut the shop down because his focus has been on keeping the prices as cheap as possible. And he's burned himself out with a bunch of people that are so demanding. They want it all yesterday. They don't want to pay anything. And continues this focus of trying to help the poor, let's just say, make it more affordable to the average person, to the point now where they have basically bled him dry. And I can't help but think those are the worst possible customers you can have. Well, the image of that, and some customers will appreciate it. What I have found is you want to go after the wealthy customers, the ones who not only take care of you, but you get these added benefits like having a cabin to stay at, for example. And of course, I didn't know that going into it. But when it comes to like even businesses, they're going to get much more regular work paid on time, usually, with a business than just somebody you just heard from. Oh, I want to upgrade to Windows 11, and you haven't heard from them in a year and a half or whatever, just calls you out of the blue. That's all well and good. But if you want to be successful, do you want to be Walmart? And you've seen the customers, when I say the customers, you've seen the memes of certain customers that shop at Walmart that you don't see at, let's say, Macy's or Nordstrom. And which one do you want to be? And then when you see the way Walmart treats customers, let's check your receipt at the door. They don't care if you shop there again. They don't care. They're dealing in numbers, right? You're just a shopper. We got 1 million of you. Who cares? But if you deal with something a little higher end where your business is appreciated, those businesses tend to do better. So for example, all the shopping malls in Phoenix have all shut down except the luxury shopping mall in Scottsdale called Scottsdale Fashion Square. Not only have they not shut down, they're growing and expanding. And when you go in there, it's all the high-end stores and it's booming. And all the cheap stuff, like the old malls, are being replaced with low-cost apartments and Walmarts. So when I put that into perspective of my own business, I'm always trying to make things affordable for everybody. But then I realize if that's the focus of my business, I will forever be sort of donating blood, if you will, but the amount I'm getting back isn't replenishing what I'm giving until I just don't have any left. And all those people, not all of them, but a lot of them, they don't care if anything happens to me as a result. It was my decision. I did it voluntarily to myself. I'm stuck in a moral dilemma on this because I can see the path to success is to go after where the work and the money is. But I also see the purpose of returning back to the community and making things affordable for people that normally couldn't afford it. What is your stance on this moral dilemma I'm having?
Well, all I can do is answer it in terms of what I did. I wanted to provide a good living for myself and my family. And that was not going to happen by virtue of helping the poor. And it's for the people who to provide something to people who can't afford it. Well, they can't afford it. Therefore, they don't get it. That may sound cold, but I'm not responsible to take care of everybody who has not been able to make a living of their own. They can't afford it because they're not making a living. When I started my business, I specifically went after business clients, and I went. One of my major focuses was business contacts through the Chamber of Commerce, business contacts through Leads clubs, holding seminars, free seminars for business people, teaching them things about computers in their business environment. When I would quote a hourly rate to somebody if they choke, cough, and gag. Well, they choke, cough, and gag. Can I pat you on the back to help you get over that? But I'm not going to adjust my price. If they can't afford it, they can't afford it. And I had business clients who coughed, choked, and gagged when they heard my rates. And my rates were not top of the market, but they were above what that business was previously paying, because they were paying, cousin Ted's next door neighbor or whatever to come and help them with their computers. So they were used to swap meet level pricing. Now, one of the client that I'm specifically thinking of, he used me for a while, and then he dropped me, and then he came back again, and then he dropped me, and then he came back again, and now he is that 30-year client friend who has the house in North Fork that lets me use it half a year. So interesting how things have developed. There was one very wealthy developer who is used to being able to put out requests for quotes in the construction business. And I was telling one of his staff people, I was giving a recommendation about something to do to a computer. And then it came back to me through that contact that the boss man wants me to give a written estimate for this work. I don't do written estimates, and well, not anymore. Back then, still really didn't do it much, but I gave him one. And then there was a $25 charge on the next invoice that I sent him for writing up that estimate, because I charge for time. Estimates in the contractor's business, you give an estimate for a job and you hope to get the job, and you have enough profit built into the job to cover that. That doesn't work the same way in the computer world. Well, he got really upset about that and complaining about it. And I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, don't pay that bill at all. The entire bill. Don't pay any of it. Just don't call me anymore. I'm not going to work for you. And that was the end of that. And I stuck to my guns on that. He was a very wealthy and influencer in Fresno. As a matter of fact, he was referred to me by a client of mine who is another long-term 30-year friend, who has referred me a lot of business, but this particular one, no, I wasn't going to work for him. And when I told my good client about that, the one that referred Mr. Big Bucks, when I told him about that, he had a reaction to me, man, like, man, I wish I could turn him away, because he didn't like the guy either. He's very demanding. Where was I going with that?
Well, we were talking about, when you, for me anyway.
Oh, it's small, low end budget. Yeah. No.
Well,
no,
even just
did
keeping
I
rates,
answer that?
Even keeping the rates low. Like, I'm starting to realize much later than I probably should have, my rates should be nearly twice what I'm charging. And yes, I would lose half of the work, but think about it. I could do half of the work and still make the same amount of money, right? That's the logic, working smarter instead of working harder. But what was motivating me was being able to do good work at affordable prices for people who ordinarily would have to take shortcuts or would have to go without. And I understand, this idea that, some people just are lazy, but then there are other people that are in bad situations. There's a number of Vietnam veterans that I've had as clients that they got the short end of the stick from the government and, disabilities and things that they sustained. And I want to do what I can to help them, because it'll never be enough, like from my perspective.
Okay.
But at the same time, I've got to be in a position that I can help them. And that can only happen if it's counterbalanced by earning not only enough income I need to live off, but a little extra then that I can use. And that's the struggle, right? Is making that determination. And with so many people that I encounter claiming they're in desperate need, but in fact they're not. They're just
Right.
trying to get a handle.
That's a mindset for them. And for you to get into a position where you can afford to help them, you have to help fewer of them now so that you have room to go seek the clients who can afford that. I think you need to be in a financial position of abundance before you really should be trying to help those who can't afford it to the level that you're doing. If I'm just going to put it real blunt, tough love, you're doing too much to help people that can't afford it, and I think it might be dragging you down. And
Well, I'm dragging myself.
You got to
down.
cut it. It's your choice. It's been your choice all
But
along.
yes, absolutely. Without any business school or education in business management, I do what I feel is right. But at the end of the day, I wonder, what about what's right for me? What's right for my ability to sustain some sort of mental health, in the sense of how much, like there's a question I ask myself, how much can I take on? Where's my breaking point? And I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious. How much can one person endure before they crack? And I feel like I've gotten pretty close to it a couple times and backed off. Some might argue that I did crack, but that was like a game I would play with myself. I would just not say no. If anybody called and needed something, I'd say yes. And I would keep the price as cheap as I could keep it, and end up working 12, 14, 16-hour days, get it done, move on, collect the check. The sooner I get it done, the sooner I get paid, the sooner I can help the next person. And what that's doing is just me carving a hole that I can't get out of, because if I would say I can do it, but for twice the amount of money, I'd still be competitive. And at the same time, those customers that say, no, you're too much, good. Then now that's not me saying no. Now it's
Right.
them.
They go away and find somebody else.
So I'm really struggling with that, because the business side of it makes sense, but the human side of it feels cold to me. But when the human side of it makes sense, then the business side of it feels like, there's no sort of reciprocal, other than a thank you. Somebody says, oh my gosh, my computer doesn't work. I can't go to work and earn a living without my computer. Could you help me, please, Obi-Wan Kenobi? All right, let me help you, and I'll charge you $50. How's that? Okay. And then I'm having a problem and I can't pay my electric bill. I don't call them and go, hey, I can't pay my electric bill. Could you help me out? They don't follow up to see how I'm doing. They're not doing it. As far as they're concerned, they're done with me. Transaction's over. So it's not like helping a friend or a family member where later on you get help back if needed. And I think if that's the case, then the rate has to go up. I don't know. I'm trying to talk myself into doing something I don't want to do, but I know it's not working. By keeping the prices low, I'm keeping busy, and I'm keeping myself financially stuck, because there's only so many hours in a day. So one employee can only do so many hours of work.
Right.
I don't know. I really enjoy fixing computers. I do not enjoy charging customers or collecting the payment. I would like to offload that. Let Mara do that. She can write up contracts. She can write up the bills. She can set the hourly rate. I just want to do the work. I've heard this from other techs too. The paperwork is the worst.
Yeah. Well, I've every year I have advanced in my techniques to make it simpler and easier to do. So I'm pretty happy with where I've got the paperwork evolved to. It's not nearly as much of a pain as it used to be. How about we turn to a tech question, then call it a wrap? We've got a tech question out here. Photomix Media says, Doug, with our 3:08 p.m. Doug, with our identity data out in the deep dark web, do we need to be influenced by others about outdated apps with security issues? I saw this a few minutes ago. I'll take a run at it first, unless you're okay. Identity out in the deep dark web. These are two separate issues, the way I see it. Identity out in the deep dark web, yeah, there's some things you need to do to deal with that. The part about outdated apps with the security issues is a separate matter. Stop using the outdated apps that have security issues. Those security issues may or may not be providing more of your information out to the deep dark web, but let's see, do we need to, both of these need to be addressed. As far as your identity in the deep dark web, my response to that is all of your accounts, not just the ones that have money in them, all of your online accounts need to have complex passwords and two-factor authentication. Don't use the same passwords. Preferably use a password manager of some form. If you're using a password manager in a web browser, make sure that you have that signed into the account, such as if it's on Microsoft Edge, then you need to be signed into Microsoft account and have that account properly protected. If it's Google, then you sign into that account, have it properly protected, use all of the security features that they have available, and put all the protections in place. Whether your identity stuff is verified as being out there in the deep dark web is irrelevant. You don't even need to go check on that. These days, everything needs to have complex passwords, not the same password everywhere, two-factor authentication, yada, yada, yada. You heard me say that already. Apps on your computer and your mobile devices need to be up to date. Don't use any really off the beaten path, shady kind of software and apps that might have, hidden agendas. What else? You're not going to erase your stuff from the deep dark web. It's out there. It's out there, and even if it's not verified as out there, it may be out there, or it may become out there someday, because someplace that you have an account is likely going to have a breach. And if that breach causes your user account with them, your password with them, your physical address, your phone number, if it exposes all of that, if you at least can prevent them from signing into your account by having the two-factor authentication, they're not directly accessing your information, but they're getting all that information about you so that they can use that other places trying to compromise you. If it, for instance, just to fill out a credit application and get a new credit card in your name, but to their benefit, if you don't have freezes on your credit accounts with the 3 credit bureaus, at least that's what we deal with in the U.S. I don't think those are, I don't know what other countries deal with, but have your credit frozen so that nobody can open a new account. You have to be educated about all this stuff, and it's a nightmare to have to be educated about all this stuff, but it was also a nightmare to have to be educated about all the things you need to know in order to drive a car. My daughter learned the lesson about checking oil the hard way, and now she checks it. There's a lot of things that we have to learn in all the areas of our lives. Well, cybersecurity is one of them, and it's a thing. Get over it and learn it.
Or don't.
And then suffer the consequences.
Well,
you may suffer the consequences even if you do all of the right things.
Exactly. I was going to rate that.
It's just layers of protection. No matter what levels of protection you put on your house, you can have deadbolts on all the doors. You can have bars over the windows. You can have alarm system. You can pay a live security guard to guard your house after building a fence around your house. And if somebody wants to get at you bad enough, they will.
So these are deterrents. They're not
They're all
absolute.
deterrents, and they're
So here's what
layers of
happens.
security.
Here's what I see in it. So the news comes out with a story about a bunch of passwords being compromised. And then suddenly people care about their passwords. Why weren't they caring about their passwords 3 days ago before the news article? Tomorrow there'll be another news article that scares them into worrying about whatever the clickbait is. It's all clickbait. This has always been going on. Just because the news selects that as a story doesn't mean it's any more of a concern today than it was 3 days before you were made aware of it. So my focus is on what you don't know. My focus is always thinking about what they're not telling you. What other things should you be concerned about? And at what point do you realize you cannot control everything that happens in your life? Just because you don't smoke doesn't mean you're not going to get lung cancer. You know, things happen, and the sooner we find out about it, the sooner we can remedy it, and the faster we can fix it, and the less expensive it is. Generally speaking, a problem with the car, if you ignore it, it's just going to get to a point where it's unmanageable, or it's going to cost more to fix than, you know, the guy that claims somebody stole his credit card, but he's not reporting it because the thief is spending less than his wife does. But, you know, this idea that all of a sudden, because something's in the media, it now gains our attention and our concern, when it should have been our attention and concern the minute we turn the computer on, in my opinion. And on the one hand, I'm appreciative that the news is bringing awareness, but on the other hand, I'm disappointed it's necessary, that people are so easily manipulated, and tomorrow it'll be something else, and the day after that, it's whatever gets you coming back, clicking on the news. For those of us that are private individuals, consumers, I honestly don't care what you do. And I know that sounds cold, but the fact is, I cannot take on that bandwidth of dealing with an individual whose whole identity is worth a drop in a bucket compared to the business clients that pay me and have the identities of their customers and their employees they're protecting. So when we're talking about VPNs and we're talking about passwords, we're talking about, in this context, you. But in the scheme of things, the bigger context, from my perspective, is who has your data and what are they doing to protect it? If I hand my credit card to the server at the restaurant and they walk away with it, how do I know what they're doing with it? I could do everything right with my credit card and think nothing of it. And then all of a sudden I got charges I never saw before. I could do everything right and make that server always keep that credit card in front of me at all times. They now bring the little reader to your table now. And then the credit card company gets hacked and they got my information that way. So that's just you. That's only affecting you. When you have a hospital and it's got patient information for 10,000 patients in the last few months, the consequences of that getting out is far greater and is of far more concern to me than any one individual. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So my thought is, when it comes to end users asking these questions, there's a bigger picture I don't think they're seeing. What you do and how you choose to do it is your responsibility and your consequences alone from one end to the other. And so I don't care. There's no advice I can give each individual user that will be exactly the same because of how they use their computers and what they use them for, and any bad habits they have, like clicking on links or they've turned off Windows updates, or they've disabled certain Windows services because some online influencers suggest that they get better gameplay. And as a result, now they've lost their identity, or they've been in, there's a million different ways people get infected. And it's not humanly possible for me to explain to each individual what they uniquely need to do to put themselves in the best course of action to avoid this from happening within their ability. But with a company, and when the data at stake is that of the employees and the customers, this is an entirely different question, and one that is approached with solutions, actual solutions that we deploy versus advice. And then we never know if that person ever followed our advice, right? And then there's real consequences. where if we deploy that in a hospital and that hospital gets hacked, there's going to be some massive accountability. Think of, you're aware of the whole CrowdStrike event, right?
Yeah.
They're about this close from going out of business. Like, they are getting the crap suit out of them now for all the financial losses that occurred. But if somebody, Joe Schmo, sitting at home watching YouTube videos does it, you know what I mean? What can you and I do about that? There's no consequence. It's their own action, their own consequence, and it affects only them. So from all of that, what I'm getting at is you need to do whatever it is you feel you need to do. And it's not for Doug or I to really guide you that way, any more so than asking us what you should have for dinner tonight. When you're responsible for feeding other people, okay, different story. So anyway, I just don't have an answer. That's the ultimate. There's just no one blanket answer I can give to an individual that I feel would be complete. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and as I'm looking back at the question again, and then I need to wrap this up. But do we need to be influenced by others about outdated apps? So I have to read between the lines. What is the influence the others are saying? It's just warning you to not use outdated apps. The really question is, do we need to be influenced? Do you need to be influenced? I don't know. Do you need to be influenced before you take care of your digital security? If you're not taking care of your digital security, then maybe you do need to be influenced.
Or not.
I don't care whether it's how you start taking care of your digital security. If being influenced by others helps you get there, then sure. That's me getting picky about the way the question is worded to try to answer the question the way it's worded. Yeah, I need to get moving out of here.
All righty. Well, it's been fun as always.
Yes.
And, I would encourage people to put their questions in ahead of time so that we're not at this sort of waiting on some response in our interactive chat. Sometimes questions go by, we never even saw them. And we'd love very much to answer your questions as best we can. And sometimes people want answers we don't have, but we always try our best to provide at least an honest answer or a direction if it's a complex answer where you can go and find that online or through other media perhaps that might have a complex thing broken down into steps that you can follow. Sometimes that's the answer, is to go over here and read this, But we certainly love interacting with all of you, and we thank all of you for hanging out with us today. Doug, as always, an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you again for joining me. And thanks to everybody in the chat room who have participated. We enjoy having you here. Thanks to the super chats and the Amazon gift cards. And what do you have scheduled tomorrow, Doug?
Let's see, tomorrow's Friday. Yeah, I expect my normal show tomorrow. I don't have any particular content planned for it. But I just a little piece of, I mentioned somebody was psychic in the chat earlier today. Well, there's another psychic occurrence today, that the trailer that you played, it's the same shirt.
I was going to wear the same shirt, and I thought, what are the odds Doug would wear the same shirt?
I did not intend. I put this shirt on today before seeing that. I didn't see that trailer until after my show this morning, when I already had this shirt. So that was Mara's psychic vibes going on there. That she said, Doug's going to wear this shirt. Or whoever. I don't know which one of you pulled my image with this shirt, but.
She did. Yeah, she
did.
She has a little touch of witchcraft about her. So
yeah, you know it.
I sent you the video link so that you could post it just in case, because I saw you.
Oh, okay, great.
But that's yours to do with,
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Belongs to us all.
All right, thank you.
And yeah, we're going to bring Doug on at least once a month, maybe more often if there's enough interaction with the audience to say, hey, we got a buildup of questions. You want to come on? And, you know, if he's available, we'll make that happen as well. So it's not like anything's set in stone, and it's based on user demand. Let's just put it that way. Thanks to each and every one of you for, again, joining us today. Thanks to Mara for all the administrative work that she does tirelessly in the background. And of course, a special shout out to our friend Doug Betts. Live Windows Training with Doug Betts is his YouTube channel. And we'll have a link to that. If we don't already, we'll have a link to that in our show notes. If you're not subscribed to him, check out his channel. If you like my content, I think you're going to love his content. That's going to wrap it up for us for today on behalf of Doug and myself. Thank you all for watching. We will see you all again tomorrow. I'll be live at my usual time, completing the Leon Lead 207 digital build. So I hope you'll join us for that. Until next time, bye for now.